Welcome to a special emergency broadcast of the Null News. So this is something we've been doing here. We've been always doing the news on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a while now. And just recently, we've been breaking into covering some things that are, I feel, important immediately. Last week, it was the leaky vessel security breach from, the container orchestration run C specifically, but it affected runtimes like Docker. And today, it's a company I'd like to honor the things they brought to the communities. So if you guys don't know, we're going to be talking about Weaveworks. What happened to Weaveworks? And then more importantly, towards the end of this, I'm going to talk about two things that they have just freely given to the community that are massive. Now, Weaveworks did a lot of open source. A lot of their stuff you can go check out their GitHub. They're open source. But they gave two things that are crucial, and I don't think they got enough credit for producing. And I want to give them the credit that they deserve for that. So we're going to be going over that. All right. So what was Weaveworks? If you guys didn't know, Weaveworks produced GitOps automation for Kubernetes stacks. We can see that here. This is their website as it is. What exactly happened to them? Well, yesterday, there was a post on LinkedIn by their CEO. Hi, everyone. I am very sad to announce officially that Weaveworks will be closing its doors and shutting down commercial operations. Customers and partners will be working with a financial trustee with whom we shall announce soon. The company was turning over double digits revenue and had more than double the number of new product logos in 2023. However, this sales growth was lumpy and our cash position consequently volatile. We needed a partner or an investor for long-term growth. Finally, a very promising M&A. This is a merger and acquisition process with a larger company fell through at the 11th hour. This, I feel, so Alexis is the CEO, or was the CEO. This has to be gut-wrenching for them. That this fell through, that this merger and acquisition fell through. And so we decided to shut down. I can only apologize to everyone for this difficult churn. I can say that this should not have happened, but I know that we are not alone in this market. So the market's really tough, and being cash strapped is a difficult position to be in. It's a super difficult position to be in. I can only apologize to everyone as it's difficult. I could say that this should not have happened, but I know that we are not alone in this market. Bigger vessels have gone astray. The Weaveworks team is a special group that have been through a long and tough journey. I know that everyone will be motivated to do their very best for our customers, our open source community, and each other. You have done well and can be proud. We shall always have a shared story. Our story has been so exciting from the first days of containers struggling to be born, the days when someone got Kubernetes working for the first time on Azure, the start of the CNCF. These Weaveworks has been through all of this. The day when we wiped out our systems with a key press, the first months of the COVID pandemic, then investment and our work to figure out GitOps for the GitOps for a lot of great enterprise customers. And there have been dire moments too, but we figure most of them out together. You've shared all of this and all deserve every memory of a good place to work and with the privilege of knowing that you are among the best. The story does not end here. Our open source software is used everywhere. I am working with several large organizations to make sure the CNCF Flux is in the healthiest state. More on that soon. And I would can't read in the morning. I apologize. And I would invite anyone who reads this and wants to know what is next or offer some help, Please get in touch with me. Thank you. He ends with, we shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all our exploring, we'll be able to arrive where we started and know the pledge for the first time. And know the place for the first time. All right. So, honestly, this is sad, but also kind of what startups try to do. Startups aren't guaranteed. Even startups with exceptionally good engineers and even what I would say a really good idea. I have loved Weaveworks, and I have actually used them in my YouTube content where they have blog articles and stuff on GitOps. Now, all of you know, if you watched my video on GitOps, I kind of disagreed a little bit with like some of the terminology where they say that GitOps is a Kubernetes specific thing, and I don't agree with that statement. I do think Kubernetes is one of the tools you can leverage to do GitOps well, but that's a little bit beyond the point. So, yeah, Weaveworks is closing its doors. That's the news. Now, I think a lot of you will see headlines like this. Cloud native container management platform Weaveworks shuts its doors. But I don't think that I don't think these articles give nearly enough credit where credit is due for some of the things that they've done. I also don't think that if you look through their Git repository, you see enough of the places where credit is due as well. You can start to get an idea looking through here. Weave GitOps and Weave Assured Flux, their Terraform controller. These are amazing things, but what are they? Well, I'd like to draw your attention to the official CLI for Amazon EKS. Now, if you don't know, Amazon EKS, you can use it through the AWS CLI command line. But you need a PhD in AWS, and even then, it could take you a week to stand up a cluster. I actually ask you, go stand up an EKS cluster using the AWS CLI command line. Go try it. Once you have tried it, you will come crawling back to EKS CTL. It's absolutely amazing. It's fantastic. It's how the AWS command line should have been, to the point that Amazon adopted it. Okay? So it is now the official CLI for Amazon. Amazon has actually officially adopted it. Amazon has docs for it. So it's fully adopted by Amazon. And if you scroll down here, sponsored by Weaveworks, it was built originally by Weaveworks. Weaveworks is the reason we have a CLI for EKS. Now, for those of you who don't care, don't use EKS on Amazon, great. But I am trying to give them the credit that was due to them. This is kind of their send-off. It's kind of sad. Honestly, I am honestly sad. I am honestly sad. Flux. We all know Argo CD. We probably all know Flux as well. They're probably the two big titans of GitOps. If you scroll down, you'll see, CNCF is stamped all over it. But who gave it to the CNCF? Weaveworks. Weaveworks created Flux 1, and then they followed it up with Flux 2, fixing a lot of the issues with Flux. Flux is really amazing. I actually, if you're looking to get into GitOps, there's Argo CD and there's Flux. In my opinion, Argo CD is kind of like the Istio, and Flux is kind of like the other one that I keep forgetting its name. Flux is a lot easier. It takes a lot of the rough edges off. It's not quite as powerful, especially if you're looking to do multi-cluster management. It's not quite as powerful. Not at least the last time I checked, which was like a year ago. So maybe it's more powerful now. But it's pretty powerful. And the other things that they brought along with this, now you can start to tie things together. They have a Weaveworks backstage, which tied in Flux and Weaveworks to backstage. So you could see your deployments in Flux, in backstage with this plugin. That's pretty amazing. I don't know if you guys don't know what backstage is, but yeah. That backstage is basically an IDP for Kubernetes. So these are two behemoth projects. These are two projects that changed entire communities. I'm being serious on that. These two projects, the EKS CTL, literally the behemoth Amazon adopted it as their own official CLI because it's that much better. And I can't tell you how much better it is because it's just that much better than the official, the original official. And then Flux. Now, are there any questions that you all have about Weaveworks? I'm not a MBA specialist. I can't look through this blog post here by the CEO and read any more details into it. I don't have anything more than that. So this is all I have as far as understanding. Now, I will still cover it in my weekly roundup of news this Sunday. So if there is more information that comes out, if there's more on how they're going to hand off the things like Flux, I'm sure Flux is in good hands. The same as EKS CTL, because those things have companies that are going to look after them. But if there's more information, I'll bring that up Sunday as we cover the news as a whole. Another thing we're going to do with these emergency news sections is make them a little longer than they actually are today. Today, they're a little bit short. They're a little bit sweet. They're a little painful. And I know that. I'm working on them. But I didn't want to wait till the end of the week to cover these important topics. It felt weird. And this is why I started last week with the leaky vessel. It felt weird to wait to the end of the week to tell you about something that you needed to patch before the end of the week. It feels weird to talk this Sunday about Weaveworks. It feels weird. I do think they did amazing things for the industry. Really, I don't think containers would be where they are without their contributions to Flux. You know the other contribution that they're not going to get credit for? Let me bring it up. There's another project. There's another project that came from Weaveworks doing Flux and Argo CD, and that's the GitOps engine. Now, it's an Argo project, but you'll find the Weaveworks contributors in here. And what they did was they said, hey, we have these two tools that take a slightly different approach, but they do a lot of the same things. And so they combined it to the Weaveworks, or the GitOps engine. I said the Weaveworks engine. But, right. Various GitOps operators address different use cases and provide different user experience, but all have a similar set of core features. I do believe Weaveworks worked on this because, or were a part of this, because this happened when the CNCF took Flux in, and Flux started to migrate to the GitOps engine. So, yeah. Without Flux, there was no need to do this. Now, why is this important? Why is this important that it's broken out of Argo CD? Well, it allows anybody to do a lot of those Argo CD types of things. The GitOps engine has stuff for, really the GitOps engine powers Flux and Argo CD, but it has all of that shared stuff. You want to access Git, you want to do those types of things. That's all in this engine, this backend that powers those two different takes on it. And it was a combined effort. When this was happening, the Flux and Argo CD people got together and was like, hey, what can we merge out of this? And I think it's really awesome because now there could be a third project that uses the GitOps engine. And this is the really sad part, is that Weaveworks was prevalent through all of these things. Maybe not in core Kubernetes, although I'm pretty sure they were actually in core Kubernetes. Actually, let me see if I can't find that. I am almost positive they contributed to core Kubernetes as well. I wasn't in like SIG networking ever, so I didn't, and I feel like Weaveworks would have been more in SIG networking. But let me see if I can't. If I can't find that really quickly. For those of you that don't know, Kubernetes has this dashboard. Here, let me give you guys the link to it. Kubernetes has this dashboard that you can go and check out. That has a bunch of different things in it. And this is like stats. This is basically Git stats of Kubernetes things. So you can even like go up here and there should be like a GitOps. Let's see, GitOps working group. And this will open the dashboard for GitOps stuff. And one of the things that they do, and so you can see a bunch of cool stuff around this. And so linker D, that's what I was, that's what I was thinking. But you can also see by companies. So that's what I was going to go back over here for. Let's see. Let's see. Activity repository groups. I think it's this one. This is just counting the number of companies. All right. Let's see. I think this is pretty good usually. Ouch. So in GitOps, Weaveworks was the most active contributor except for Microsoft. This is a huge blow to the community. Huge blow to the community. So that's all I have for today. This was released yesterday morning, and I know that I said that I'm going to try to have more content for these emergency sessions, and I'm working on exactly what that will be in the future. Today is not that day. Today, this is all I have. I wanted to show you guys what Weaveworks has done, why I think that this is really, really sad that this is happening. I am really disheartened by the fact that the merger and acquisition didn't go through. I'm really sad that that didn't. I'm sure that Alexis is as well. I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. But I think it's a big deal for the whole community. I think it's a big deal for the whole community. This is going to be, there are going to be 769 contributions less in GitOps. VMware, there's only these companies at the top, and the step past those, I do not know what I clicked. Go back. The companies behind Dynatrace, it drops way off. So we're losing one of the major GitOps players. I also wanted to, give them credit for the things that they had done. And yeah, let you all know. Weaveworks is shutting its doors. It's closing up. So, is there anything I missed? Eskandral, Modprog, it's good to see you guys. It's good to see you guys. Sorry for the slight flashbang. Their website, I had Dark Reader on, does not look very good in Dark Reader, and I was trying to give them a little credit. So this is, I do the news once a week on Sundays, and I cover stuff, and I'm trying to cover some of the big stories throughout the week as they come up, and this was one of them. So I come from a container Kubernetes background, and Weaveworks has been one of the big players out there for a while, and they're closing their doors. So I thought that this was worthy of a special, I guess it was 45-minute session, letting people know that they are closing their doors. But more importantly, we covered some of the huge contributions that they've given to the community from EKS, CTL, and Flux. How many people here have used GitOps? The silence is the answer. Yeah, I mean, I want to say that you don't know what is that? I have a video on it on my main channel, what GitOps is. I'm a huge fan of GitOps. I think I'm a huge fan of GitOps. I can give you, and like the really sad part is, even in my videos for GitOps, I have references to Weaveworks material. They're not the only person that does it. Let me get you the video. If you don't know what GitOps is, let me get you a video for that. My video is kind of older. So, you might be able to find a better video from somebody else specifically on GitOps. I need to do another video on GitOps. Yeah, my last video on GitOps is from 3 years ago. So, maybe I need to do another overview on GitOps in light of this. Is there a few sentence overview? Yeah, there's a few sentence overview. So here's a few sentence overview of GitOps. GitOps is where you define your entire stack, your infrastructure, and everything in Git. So your application, you don't have to do the infrastructure. I like the infrastructure as well, is in Git. And that means a new deployment is a commit to Git. So you commit a new version of your application, and that automatically gets deployed. So it's kind of like maybe a little bit of the more extreme CI/CD situations here. And there's a bunch of ways to control how and when new things get deployed and whatnot. But the idea is that it's a commit to Git. And this makes a lot of things really easy, especially if you're talking about something that requires... especially if you're talking about something that requires like SOC 2 compliance. When you're talking about compliance, this makes deployment really easy because a lot of times you had to build systems where compliance was really important, where you had to know who deployed what and when and why. And now that's all handled by Git because Git tells you who did it, the commit message tells you why they did it, and the commit actually tells you what they did, which solves all of those things. So that's one. The other thing that it does is it makes reverting changes really easy because you just revert a change in Git. Like Git already provides you the tools to do that. And if your tooling there, all of your GitOps tooling there, makes deployments based off of that, then it becomes really easy to go back a version as well. So there's actually a lot of benefits. Now, I will say the downsides, if we're being completely honest here, is that that's a lot of stuff to manage your deployment. And so I don't think necessarily, unless if you're using a platform like Weaveworks, that it's necessarily possibly the best thing to go if you're a really small company. If you're a really small company, there's probably better alternatives if you just want to deploy your application that are simpler. And if you don't worry about, compliance, then there possibly is simpler ways. But that's what GitOps is at its core, and it's pretty cool. And it's one of my preferred deployment strategies. You have a single Docker compose on your server. Right, Mogprog. This is where, so I've probably run afoul of the Kubernetes community because I don't sit here and shill Kubernetes. I have done a ton of work in Kubernetes. I have even committed a while ago. It's been a while. I've even committed code to Kubernetes. I've actually deleted more code from Kubernetes than I've committed, but that's another story for another time. And the one thing is, I don't recommend and shill Kubernetes for every instance. Kubernetes fits a specific need, and it's about knowing that need and what your needs and requirements are and what you're actually struggling with on whether you should adopt Kubernetes. I don't think everybody should, and in fact, I think that there's probably a lot of companies that do that shouldn't. And because of that, I've made less Kubernetes content over the last year than usual. Kubernetes content for me is the easy stuff to turn out because I know it and I understand it really well. So I have to do 1/10 of the research that I do for other types of videos. Like my HTMX video, I had to do a ton of research. And because I didn't want to just give my opinions to everybody, I couldn't stream all of it either because then there would be no reason to watch the video. I don't know. Maybe I should have just streamed all of it. What about RevertDB? Because it always confuses me that the code could be easily reverted, but data. So Eskandral, that's actually a really good question, and that depends on how you design your data. It really does. So if you're changing your data, that's one thing. If you're deploying a new version of your application, that's a completely different thing. Changing your data does require... So generally, I don't think people do it as often. And then there's two ways of looking at this. Let's pull up something to draw with really quickly. there's two major ways that I've seen. I'm not going to say that these are the only ways of doing this. And this comes actually down to how your database does it. So there's two main ways that databases look at this. So there you have your NoSQL databases. NoSQL. And then you have your SQL. And this actually is probably maybe one of the big differences between them. You have your SQL. All right. So what do we know about these? This one is schema on read. And this one here is schema on write. Now, some people will say that NoSQL is schemaless, and I completely disagree with that. I have come to that conclusion that it's not schemaless. It has a schema. It just doesn't care. The database engine doesn't care. Now, the application that reads this does care. It does 100% care what schema is in here. And most of the time, you offload the work of upgrading that data to the application. So a lot of the times, this reads it, and whatever this reads, it has to be able to read multiple versions. That's generally what happens, is that you've offloaded the work of schema changes to the application. Whereas on this one, it's schema on write. So when you write it, you've got to write the right schema. And these then require, when you're upgrading, when you upgrade, you do this update of the schema. You update the schema, you have a script that runs. And you're right. With this, it's not so simple. You have to then revert the database back. And that is a cost. It's not as easy. Now, I would say that 90% of your deployments aren't changing the schema. If it is, if 90% of your deployments are changing your schema, calm down. Just calm down. I mean, this tells me you don't have a very mature product. And that's okay. That's fine. But hopefully it's also not in production at that point. If 90% of your commits are changing the database schema, you're thrashing that pretty hard. That's going to be hard on any SQL database, to be honest. And this is always going to be a pain. This is always going to be a pain. Especially if you update the SQL, the schema, and then have to revert. It's probably easier, instead of reverting, to make a new version of the application that fixes the problem. Yeah. So just think about that. If it's you probably don't want to, at this point, if you've upgraded your SQL, the schema, and you've updated all the database with whatever logic that runs on your migration scripts, you probably don't want to revert the database. Now, what some people do, there's two ways to do this. Is you take a snapshot of the stupid database before you do the update. Because what happened if something screws it up? So take a complete snapshot, and you can always revert back to the old database. Now, this has that extra storage that you have to contend with, and it costs. But if you're only going to do it for a couple of days until you know, because it's a big database, it's probably fine. It's probably worth that $100 you're going to spend, that $1,000 you're going to spend, maybe $5,000, to ensure that data isn't lost, and you don't have to do a backwards migration. You're not going to do a backwards migration. Is the thing. Absolutely, ModProg. That's another good point, as it depends on what your changes are. Adding a new row is not going to be, as long as it's a row-based, or adding a new column is probably not a problem. Probably not worth doing all of that. I was talking about bigger changes that are worth like actually reverting, because if you're just adding something, you probably don't have to worry about it. Yeah, absolutely. But if you're doing those big changes, I would probably just roll a new app really quickly if you did a really big SQL change. But there should be like a ton of testing on this. If there's a big squirrel change, there's a big squirrel change. You've tested that sucker pretty heavily, and hopefully you get away from doing really big squirrel changes. Like I said, if you find yourself in the place where you're making a lot of big squirrel changes, the database wasn't there. You released it a little early, and that happens. It happens. What I would probably recommend, if you find yourself making a lot of big squirrel changes, get a picture of a really big squirrel, and then put that on the wall, and tell your teams that you guys gotta think this through, so you can make one last big squirrel change, and then stop doing big squirrel changes. There are people who do backups, and then there are people who already do backups. I think I could probably translate that. One second. I could probably translate to that to. There are people who will learn to do backups, and people that already do backups, or something like that. I can't translate on the fly, but. Now, when you're talking about the NoSQL, the NoSQL, this is schema on read. So this is actually onto your app to support multiple versions of the data. And this really depends on the data, and actually, it's like ModProg was saying, on how you're changing the data that it's held. And so really, again, this would be on the rollback on this would depend on your app and your data. This is a little bit harder to tell you exactly how to deal with it. The schema on write is fairly easy. There's a lot of this is much more known, and the reason this is maybe less known is that it's not that it's less known at this point. At this point, there's a lot of people that do it. It just really depends on your data and your application and how you handle those things. So. Yeah, that's a little bit harder to give like a canned solution to them because, well, it is what it is. So anyways, watch my video on GitOps. Weaveworks did a ton of fantastic stuff with that. I'm super sad that they're shutting down. And at this point, it is 9:30 my time. I must get to work myself. I hope you guys like these little bits of news as they come up. Like I said, I'm working on it so that there's a little bit more content with each news segment, so it's not just a half-hour little blip. I don't know. Maybe we like the half-hour little blip. Let me know how you guys like the news segments, and let me know if you want me to keep doing them or just doing them at the end of the week like I've always done. Again, I wanted to give a shout out to Weaveworks for the great work that they've done. It's sad. It's sad, but also part of life. So I'm looking forward to what those engineers are going to bring in the future. Oh, no backup, no sympathy. I like it, Prog. I think you're right. Pity is maybe not the right translation. Sympathy might be right. If you didn't make a backup, like I'll have sympathy with you if you made a backup and that got corrupted, and then your third backup. This is why backup follows the 3-3-3 rule. You make 3 backups, and you distribute them in 3 different locations. Which means that, like, if your data center burns down, the they're not all in your data center. This is why there's a 333 rule, is because of this. Now, if you follow the 333 rule and all of them get destroyed, I will have huge sympathy for you because you just got screwed hard. You know, your data center burned down, your Azure account got hacked that, you know, one of your backups was in, and your disk or your tapes molded. I don't know. But yes, that's why there's a best practice around backups. Absolutely, yes, Control. I think I get the joke. I got the joke. I don't know how to say it cleanly in English. I'll think about it. I think I've actually heard it before in English. I just have to think about the right wording. I have to think about the wording. Anyhow, thanks everybody for joining. I have got to run now. But yeah. Thanks for joining the Null News in the morning. And you know what? I think there's a lot of people that like streaming in the morning. So maybe I'll do some code some of these mornings. Maybe I'll start coding some in the morning as well. We'll see. Especially if you guys would like to join. Usually I code in my evening time after the kids get to bed, but maybe I can do it before the kids get up. All right. Anyways, thanks everybody for joining. I will see you guys later this week. I will be streaming this evening if you guys are awake. But anyhow, I'll see you guys later. Yeah, it's not your morning. I get it.